And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bubba the Bat Flip, episode 49. You can check me out on Twitter at BDentric, Toby on Twitter at BatFlipCrazy. We're going to preview roughly the final 7 to 10 days of the season as we were just wrapping things up. And Toby's so good at always looking ahead at like the matchups and all that. So it'll be a fun way to check all this out. But first, Toby, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Bubba. I'm doing well, Yeah, I think maybe sometimes I overanalyze things a little bit, schedule-wise, player-wise, everything-wise, But it's crazy just to think that there's, 11 days left in the season. It feels like it just started, but we were saying before, it feels absolutely exhausting. And I feel like that's not necessarily normal. Like, I feel like there's pieces of it that are exhausting, like Fab on a weekly basis is certainly tiring, but I feel like just the amount of information you have to consume at all times to figure out, like today, you're planning on starting Tyler Anderson, and then it's like, the game's postponed, or you have Longo and Belt in your lineup, even though it's a short week because whatever. And then you're like, I got to figure this. Do I have guys that are still that aren't locked, So it's just, you just got to have your finger on the pulse all the time or you miss it. And that's exhausting. So
you got to have your finger on the pulse, and at the same time, you just kind of throw your hands up too, because there's certain things you just have no control over. Like Friday night, all the games have pretty much started, and then all of a sudden, oh wait, Giants have a positive test. So Giants Padres are stopped. It's like, what the F is going on? And I literally, I'm texting a good buddy of mine who lives in San Diego now, diehard Giants fan. And I'm texting him going, at first, because how's the weather down there? I'm like, because I know it's not as smoky. We found out it wasn't the smoke. And then I told him, I said, the Giants are one of the few teams, this is a no homer situation, I did not see getting COVID, because Kapler's got them so regimented, and the players are bought into being like, they've talked about it, how like hardcore they are about it. So I was like, totally like, no, there's no way. And then when they said Alex Dickerson, I'm like, no way. And then obviously it's a false positive. They got the doubleheader in. And then they play the final weekend of the year. They'll make the other one up. It'll all come together. But then again, you weren't planning that in your schedule. Tonight, like you mentioned, too smoky in Seattle. Like they shouldn't even play the Oakland games yesterday. That was nasty looking at that. But
that Luzardo start was brutal.
Well, yeah, like it's tough because I played him in DFS, and then he starts he starts out great, and then he goes like just implodes, and I'm like, what just happened? Because I'm working, so I'm just kind of watching it on my phone, and then he comes out afterwards and goes, yeah, I'm like looking for oxygen. I couldn't breathe out there. Like, well, yeah, no wonder he couldn't throw. Like hello. So it's it's crazy. Like, how do you can't factor that stuff? That's just how crazy this is. At least the Giants and Mariners, they flew into San Francisco. They're going to make up the games the next couple of days, so you're not going to completely lose them. So that's
Drew
good.
Smiley, baby. Drew Smiley.
Yep. There you go.
League winner.
Yeah, we were all over Drew in March.
I'm all over Drew now.
I know, but at least he'll come through.
Increased dramatically over the last week, Bubba.
That's outstanding. So, yeah, like I said at the start, we're going to kind of talk about favorable schedules coming up when you're looking at Fab or setting your lineups, or things along those lines. We're going to answer some listener questions, potential 2-star guys. Waiver wires are going to differ. Like Toby does a bunch of 15-team leagues. I know some of the listeners do 10 and 12-team leagues. So obviously that's going to be a whole nother ballgame. I usually do stressing out about Fab. That's how I was early in the year. I lucked out because like I only had Fab like in half my leagues this weekend. So I was just like, and I just like kind of walked away. I'm like, okay, this is what it is. This is what it is. Because I've been saying it. I've told you and others. I have, and I know I'm not the only one, but man, the injury bug just destroyed me. Like I've been making moves left and right. So yeah, the season, it was fun. And it's weird because I think in half of my leagues, I'm like third place or higher. Like I'm leading like 2 or 3. And then the other half, I'm like at the very bottom. So it's just like one or the other. So
yeah.
Then the breaks.
Sure. It's something else. For sure. And also, I must tell the listeners, because this is a monumental moment for me personally, is that I did start playing DFS earlier this week for the first time. I've never played DFS in my entire life.
Welcome to Thunderdome.
Earlier this week, I started playing. I want to give a little shout out to our boy Yancey Eaton, who has been my mentor from a DFS perspective. I'm certainly not. I have not been the best mentee so far. But then also shout out Walter McMichael, also helped me a little bit to begin with, gave me a little nudge, which was nice. So that's been fun. And then today somebody asked me, oh, should I go with Walsh or Gallo? And I was like, oh, I mean, Walsh is on a heater, but Gallo's the better player. Go with Gallo. And I apologize. I apologize profusely to you for saying that. I haven't apologized yet on Twitter, but I will apologize.
I wonder if I got that thing. I had someone ask me the same question, so I wonder if it's the same person. Because I told him Walsh.
What did you say? You said Walsh. Oh, listen to Bubba. Don't listen to me. I have a long-term mindset, people. Yeah. I have a long-term mindset. I write articles.
I do 2 podcasts every morning, Monday through Friday for DFS, and I write articles Monday through Friday. And Walsh was my first baseman today in the article. So yeah, I was going with Walsh.
I had him last week and then not this week, and so. Again, listen to Bubba. Don't listen to anything I have to say. If we're talking season long, you can listen to what I have to say. But on a day-to-day matchup basis, do not listen to a damn thing I say. It's all garbage, and I'm really sorry. I hope I didn't cost that person their league. These are big. It's big stakes right now. So every answer is important.
Yeah, but how are we supposed to know? Like, we don't know. It just you go with the best situation.
You knew, Bubba.
You knew. It's one reason why I tweeted out today that I enjoy doing DFS because it helps me as a season-long player just by knowing the player pool and who's doing well and this and that. Because I see people that I really respect, and it's like 7 or 8 days later, then they start going, oh, look at this guy was on a heater for 7 days. I'm like, well, we've been playing him for like 6 of them. So it's been really, really nice. It's just little things like that you pick up on. And some of the listeners said they picked guys up like DJ Stewart and Walsh and have been using them lately. So it's been nice.
Totally.
But
I'm excited. I got Walsh in a dynasty league.
Ooh, that's nice.
Weeks back when I saw he was playing a little bit. So
yeah, 36 homers in the minors last year, and he's carried it on. So big boy stuff. That is good to see. So let's get into this rest of season strategy here. I'll kind of just ask you each team that you have under the favorable schedule situation, because most of them, like shocker, there's double headers. So you got more than 7 games. But just how it's going to go. Finish out the season strong. And for those, we're not going to go deep into it, but the MLB passed the bubbles concept for the playoffs, which can be awesome. And no days off in the first 2 rounds. So there's 8 games a day for like at least the first 4 days. It's going to be so awesome. 8 playoff games. Absolutely amazing. So
do they do DFS for playoff games?
Oh, yeah. I've covered it in the past, but usually it's only like 2 or 3 games. So it's kind of difficult. 8 games. I'm going to be all about that life. It's going to be great. Man. Absolutely amazing. So
it's very cool. Yeah.
So it's going to be wild. Let's do the favorable schedules here. We'll start off with the obvious one, but it's not because why you think it's the obvious one. Colorado makes the list, but they're not playing in coolers for the last week of the season. 4 at the Giants, 4 at the D-backs. I kind of see your angles here, but what is it that you find to be favorable in the Rockies?
Yeah, I mean, I just think obviously when they're on the road, they're not that good of a team. But from an individual perspective, I think 8 games is really nice. They're in the heat of the competition for the playoffs, and so they're going to hopefully be close enough where they need to be playing every single game. So I think that's key. And then they've got some nice pieces. I think they've got some guys like even Fuentes, who's just kind of coming up. He's hitting relatively in the middle of the order. And at this point in time, I mean, like the thing you got to think about strategically is you got to look at I play Roto, so you got to look at your categories. You got to look where you are, where can you make up ground, where can you lose ground, how aggressive do you want to be? Because I think that's a major question is like, for me, I'm in a lot of ratio competitions. And the question is, are you passive and kind of wait to see if your competitors will make a mistake or they'll get unlucky with some bad games? Or do you get aggressive and maybe starting some guys that you aren't that interested in? In a lot of situations, I'm also in a strikeout battle. So I'm kind of being a little bit more aggressive, and I just tend to be a little bit more aggressive. But I think these are the things that you need to be thinking about. And so, when it comes down to it, yeah, Rockies on the road isn't great, but 8 games is 8 games. That's 7 full games too. Or 6 full games, and those double headers are sneaky, right? Because you can go into it and you're like, oh well, I did this week with Shogo Akiyama and Brian Goodwin, where I was like, they've got 4 games to start off with. They're only 1 lefty, and I need steals. So you go heavy towards them, but then they only really get like 1 7-inning game and 1 9-inning game in some instances, and you miss it. So always something to factor in, but I just think the pitchers aren't that great, on either of those teams, Arizona or San Francisco. And so from a hitting perspective, I think there should be some opportunities there with some interesting plays down the stretch for sure.
Yeah, and in those 8 games, I'll just highlight who they're projected. I'm using the RotoWire probable starting pitcher. We talked about it before the season started. One of the tools we love to use. I put it out for 14 days. So that week, if things stay, that's a big if in 2020. If things stay the same, they'd face Drew Smiley, Tyler Anderson, then Gossman and Cueto. So 2 lefties. We like the Rockies versus lefties, so that's interesting. 2 good lefties, so not good, but pretty good lefties. And then when they get the D-backs, though, it's going to be interesting for the doubleheader, Zach Gallen and Alex Young. And then one lefty, one righty. And then Luke Weaver, and finish the year with Taylor Clark. So I kind of like, Young, Weaver, Clark. I've seen be hittable this year. You have Smiley, who we like. You never know. Tyler Anderson, it's all or nothing with him. I've watched him enough this year. He's either on or he's going to get hit all over the ballpark. And then it's pretty strong, assuming his start this weekend goes well. His MRA was good. He's scheduled to start this weekend. And then Cueto, usually you don't blow him up, but you can hit him. So I don't know. The Giants series is a little tricky. The D-backs, though, especially that weekend series, big fan of what they got going on there. So I like that a lot.
Oh, man, Gausman's supposed to come back now?
Yeah, his MRI came back clean, and they're going to schedule him to throw this weekend. Right now, RotoWire had him pitching on Thursday. I'd expect him to throw more Friday or Saturday, but that's why I think this could switch around a little bit. But they're going to want to get him out there at least twice before the season's over, get him ready for the postseason, because he's almost like their ace.
Oh, he's totally their ace. Yeah. He's so good this year. I had him in big leagues, and I dropped him because it's like, you figure he's going to miss a little bit of time, but it happens. Oh, well. Yeah. I mean, Gausman is certainly really strong, and I actually really do like Smiley. Like you said, Anderson is hit and miss. But, those aren't guys that scare you away, right? They're not pitching matchups where you're like, as much as you love them, you got to kind of step back and say, okay, I love Drew Smiley. I have him on every single team I could possibly have in the world. But he's still Drew Smiley. He's not Jacob deGrom. So just close to it. So, yeah. So I like that. I like this.
I like it. Next up, we have the St. Louis Cardinals, 3 at Kansas City, which you can usually get to them more often than not. And then 5 big ones in Milwaukee. If you do the quick math there, that should be 2 double dips. Let me double check the schedule real quick, but they missed so many games. It makes sense.
It's only four with 1 double dip.
Yep. Yeah. 3 games. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but 8 games. So they're going to be taxed pitching wise. The Cardinals offense as a whole, to me, I don't know about you, pretty disappointing this year as what we'd expect from them. Brad Miller, he's done his thing. Tommy Edman kind of showed flashes like so is DeYoung, but they've missed so much time also. It's been kind of frustrating. But before I'll go into the pitching at the end here, but what's your thoughts on the Cardinals in this series against teams that you can definitely take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, they've got some interesting pieces. I've been targeting Milwaukee for steals, obviously, which let me tell you, I need steals like the devil. I don't know if you need the devil really, but like I need steals. Heading into this weekend, I was 3rd overall in the OC, and I can gain hundreds of points in stolen bases. All season I've been trying to get stolen bases, and I can't do it. And I went after Harrison Bader. So he's an example of a guy where he's batting 9th, but a lot of games. He generally plays every day. He's got speed. He's got a little bit of power, gets on base. So he shouldn't absolutely destroy you. So that's like a guy that I targeted for steals, who maybe next week, at least in the second half of the week, the Royals aren't good to target for steals. You can go after a guy like that. Obviously, their pitching has come around a little bit with Burns being, just so incredible. And I think he might have 2 starts next week. I think
does not at the moment. He only has 1 at the moment. And
okay.
it's against St. Louis, but he only has 1.
Okay. He's got the 2. It's this week that he's got
2 this week.
starts. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, so I think generally speaking, I think those are really good. That's a decent kind of end of the season for stolen bases if you're looking for it. Milwaukee has been pretty bad all year round. And so that might be a kind of late season matchup that I might target with him, maybe Tyler O'Neill as well. He got a stolen base yesterday. Of course, he's like the one guy I didn't pick up. So yeah, I think there's nothing that really scares me there outside of maybe that Corbin Burns start. But outside of that, I think it might be a nice little opportunity to take advantage. Brady Singer has obviously looked pretty good. He's got 2 starts next week, but A couple maybe mediocre to poor matchups, but the rest I think should be pretty nice for hitters.
Yeah, mediocre to poor is putting it nice. So like Jacob Giannis, who got destroyed tonight, ERA closing in on 6 right now. He gets the Cardinals. Singer, he pitched great 2 starts ago. He's gotten shelled a lot of times. He's hit and miss. We'll see how he throws on Wednesday. He's the scheduled starter for Wednesday against the Tigers. And then you get Danny Duffy, assuming he makes that start since he missed the plane, got busted. There's rumors he might have got DUI again. Who knows what's going on there. So we'll see if Danny Duffy starts that game. And then the Milwaukee series, Burns, yes, very tricky. Not one you look forward to. But then the doubleheader, you got Lindblom, who pitched well his last time out, which kind of pitched like the Lindblom we'd hoped for. So we'll see how that goes. You got Brent Sutter, who you can take advantage of. Brett Anderson, you can take advantage of. And then Woodruff, man, he's been good, but not what people wanted him to be this year. So, yeah, some good matchups. Probably like 4 or 5 of those matchups. Big fan of for the St. Louis Cardinals going into that week.
Let's just say Josh Lindblom. I told you guys on Twitter, whoever the guy is who was arguing with me about how Josh Lindblom is not a good pitcher, he's a very good pitcher who has been unlucky. I'm going to be all over him next year. Mark it down on your calendars. I'll be doing 15 to 20 drafts next year. You mark down each one of those on the calendars. Josh Lindblom, shares way up.
Yeah, I was a big Lindblom fan. I think I even wrote something about him as one of the late round pitchers to take earlier this year before the draft, like back in March. I liked him a lot, but it just, like you said, he was unlucky. When pitcher list and those guys, Nick Pollock, and them break down what's going on, and it makes sense to me, then I definitely understand he's unlucky. So just look at the numbers. It's very, very true. Totally. The Washington Nationals, this is the team that outside of Trey Turner and Juan Soto, the rest of the offense has been so hit and miss this year, like very, very hit and miss. But they got 4 at Philadelphia, or 4 at home versus Philadelphia, 4 at the Mets. The games against Philadelphia, you get wonderful Zach Wheeler. You get a doubleheader against Aaron Nola, Blake Parker, and then they get Spencer Howard, assuming he's back from the IL. So keep that one in mind. And then when you look at the other games for the Fightin' Phils, I just realized I could have made this so much easier on myself. There we go. They get the day off on Thursday. Then they get Charlie Morton in Tampa, Yarborough, and Fleming. So that's
I think it's the Nats. They have the 4 against Philly, and then they get 4
I was on the right spot. Dumb. So that's right. So then the 4 is Fetty. Fetty faces Waka, faces Porcello, the DeGrom, and then Lugo. So Lugo's been sneaky good. Obviously, DeGrom's DeGrom. Mm-hmm. But you got Porcello and Waka you can hit. Spencer Howard might not even pitch that game. Blake Parker, Nola's tough. And then assuming Wheeler pitches too, that could be up in the air since he can't even put his pants on. So the Nats could run into some sneaky like step up out of nowhere starting pitchers they could just shell. That's an interesting schedule for sure.
Yeah, I think, my thoughts there are stolen bases.
Mets, they've
got stolen bases on the mind. So the Mets and obviously the Nats. I mean, the Nats and the Braves and the Mets have just been god awful at holding runners. So that's kind of where my mind is there. There's also, I think, 8 games. Is it 8?
8 games.
It's 8 games. They have 8 games. And I think that Mets series is key. And then I also think they're all right-handed pitchers, every single one of them. So like a guy like Eric Thames, who hasn't really been that useful this year, he could get 8 starts next week in a row at first base, which I think could be, obviously that's the type of like league winning setup, where you can pick up a guy off the wire and plug him in for 8 games that last week. Nats are going to be out of it probably, or maybe they probably already are. I just hope Scherzer makes that last start, even though he's looked god awful. But it's just like guys like that who maybe, I feel like they'll play Turner, they'll play all those guys, I think throughout the course of the season, maybe give them one day off that last series or something like that. But I definitely think that, hopefully they can get a good little run and maybe steal 15 bases.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. It should be an interesting one. Soto's going to probably lock up the MVP. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of guys that could be MVPs, Tatis, many others. That'll be a fun vote to see how you can win a 60-game MVP award. That'll be fun.
For sure.
Houston Astros, 3 at Seattle, 4 at Texas. Before we even talk about the hitting, McCullers 2-step, Framber Valdez 2-step, Then you obviously have Greinke, Javier's, whatever. But Urquidy pitched great on Tuesday night. He finishes up a two-step this weekend in Arizona. Great matchups to pitch against Seattle and Texas. These are guys you want to target with pitchers. So obviously, you're not going to get these like Framber and McCullers off the waiver wire. You might get a Urquidy available for a 1-star. Doubt it. You probably already picked up for 2, but that's on the table. When you're talking hitting, though, the Astros will face Marco Gonzalez, Leger Newsom, Nick Margevicius, so 2 lefties with Seattle. Then you got Lance Lynn, Cody, Gibson, Lyles. So Lynn's a little troubling. Gonzalez has been okay. Other than that, my goodness, this could be a get-right spot for the playoffs.
Absolutely, yeah, and again, going to stolen bases. I mean, those are again some teams I think you want to target generally. I mean, the lefties are a little bit tougher, but yeah. So I think that's the Astros' end of the season schedule is just essentially the Mariners and the Rangers over and over and over again. Or else I think they play the Angels too, something like that. So it's all good from the Astros perspective, I think, moving forward. There's nobody who, outside of Lynn, who really scares me from a matchup perspective. So I think they have a really nice end to the season, and they're in the heat of things. So they're really going to have to play hard. They're going to have to play everybody. I mean, Gurriel was back in the lineup today after the kind of injury scare of the weekend. So, yeah, I like that schedule a lot too.
Yeah, Altuve just got activated today as well on Tuesday, so he's back. They need to get right for the postseason, so we'll see how that goes. And that's a good final 10 games or so to do that with.
For sure.
Toronto Blue Jays, 4 in Buffalo against the Yankees, 3 in Buffalo against Baltimore. My goodness. Like, that's just launching pad. I'm looking forward to the Yankees games. Like, those are over-unders better be like 12. They do get Garrett Cole, tricky. Then you got Tanaka, Jordan Montgomery, J.A. Happ. You love the Jays versus the lefties. And then when Baltimore comes to town, you got John Means, Jorge Lopez, and Aiken. So they have 4 lefties out of 7 games.
Oscar gonna eat.
Oscar, that was part of the news we were going to talk about. He's supposed to be back Thursday or Friday this week, so he will be back next week. He took batting practice on Tuesday. They expect him back Thursday or Friday. So lock and load. But what's your thoughts? Because this should be a feast of a week.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Jays, are they all at home?
All in Buffalo.
They're all in Buffalo. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's beautiful. I mean, you gotta absolutely love that. That ballpark just plays well. And yeah, there's not that many tough matchups. I mean, from a pitching perspective, obviously Cole is really good. And I think he's getting there too. I mean, the thing about him is, I don't know whether it's a consistent thing. I haven't looked at it, but last year he started slow too, and then the velo started to tick up, and then he started to be a little bit more dominant. The home run per fly ball was just out of this world. So I think generally speaking, it's a really solid matchup there. If Teoscar comes back, he may be on a lot of waiver wires because he was dropped. Obviously, coming back from an oblique, you're a little sketchy. But it also seems like it was something that pretty early on they realized wasn't as serious as they had feared, and so that could be really good. And just like there's some guys in there like Travis Shaw may not be the best example. I'm trying to rack my brain for some of the guys that may have some value there, but who I'm kind of might be interesting is like Alexander Kirk. Their catcher, if he gets some opportunities there. I know catcher has been something we've had to tap into with JTR and others being injured. So yeah, that again, nobody's really jumping out in my mind about who you might be able to exploit, but in terms of some nice kind of matchups down the stretch, I think they've got them.
Yeah, great matchups, a lot of lefties, could be a ton of fun there. With Toronto, Baltimore plays Toronto for 3 of those games. But before they go to Toronto for that launching pad of a game, they have 3 in Boston, and Boston doesn't scare anybody. Boston might have one of the worst records in the American League, and I've been loving using Baltimore all year. Baltimore, Detroit, cheap on DFS. No one wants them in season long, and they just produce night in and night out for the most part, especially for what their expectations are when people see win-loss record and whatnot. But the Orioles, they have Monday off, and they face Mazza, Eovaldi, and Kickham with Boston, 3 guys you can take advantage of. And then they get Taijuan Walker, who just got destroyed by the Yankees, who are getting healthy, by the way. Watch out for that. Yeah, watch out for a healthy Yankees team, folks. It's coming. And then they got Tanner Roark and Chase Anderson. So these are matchups you can exploit. Last 3 in Buffalo helps a lot. What's your thoughts on Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, especially that Yankee series.
Which Yankee series?
Not Yankee series. The Blue Jay series. Sorry, it's all righties. So your guys like DJ Stewart, Jose Iglesias, Cedric Mullins is a great one too. The Blues. What's that?
Ryu Ruiz.
Yeah, Ryo Ruiz, that DFS stack. So I just think there's a lot there. I mean, even Ryan Mountcastle's been crushing when he's in the lineup. So I think there's a lot of opportunities maybe there. People who could be on the wire. Austin Hayes just came back. He's batting 8th, so that limits it a little bit of interest. But there's guys that should be available on the wire there, and I think you could take advantage as well. And then I have the Yankees on my mind. Who are they playing at the last?
Toronto.
At Toronto, yeah. So those are those are the 3 righties, and then Boston. I think 2 of those 3 are righties that you mentioned.
Yep.
So it's a very nice setup, I think, for them down the stretch. Obviously, only 6 games, which is a little bit of a bummer, but they also shouldn't be impacted by do we rest our starters? What do we do because they're out of it?
Yep, it's going to be fun. Boston has a 6-gamer as well. They have 3 at home and then 3 on the road. The 3 at home against Baltimore we just talked about, but they face the lefty Aiken. They place Alex Cobb and Kramer, who've been interesting pitchers. Mm-hmm. Then they go on the road to Atlanta to get Wright, who just can't stop anything right now. You got Josh Tomlin and then Cole Hamels, who makes his debut on Wednesday tomorrow. If you're listening, or Wednesday, if you listen Wednesday, he's thinking to start today. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So Boston, when they go to Atlanta, could be really, really nice. Baltimore, you never know, especially against that pitching staff and bullpen. So what's your thoughts on Boston?
Yeah, I mean, I just think obviously their lineup just is not great. But there's some guys that have been heating up, like Jackie Bradley Jr. has actually been really good if you're in deeper leagues. Maybe looking for some stolen bases because those Braves are just god awful. Bobby Dahlbeck, obviously, a lot of people probably picked him up, but just some really nice pitching opportunities there down the stretch for them. I kind of like them as another one to target. Again, another team that's out of it, and so really shouldn't be impacted by like the wanting to rest their starters type of mentality.
Yep, no doubt about it. Yankees, who was on your mind, and we've been talking about. Like I said, they're getting healthy. They got Giancarlo Stanton back and Gio Urshela back on Tuesday. Aaron Judge supposed to be back Thursday or Friday. Watch out, folks. They're getting healthy at just the right time. They have 4 at Toronto, where they face Tanner Roark, Chase Anderson, Hyun-Jin Ryu, and Robbie Ray. I can't wait for that game. And then they have 3 at home against the Marlins, Alcantara, Rogers, and Urania. So some outstanding matchups. Ryu's the only guy that really scares me. Alcantara's not bad, but yeah. And it's the Yankees, a healthy Yankees team in Buffalo, and then at home. This has this recipe for disaster written all over for the pitching staffs.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate they got 2 righties and 2 lefties to start off in Toronto, because then it's like some of the guys like Brett Gardner maybe loses a little bit of value, especially with guys coming back. And but yeah, I mean, they should absolutely crush. And so if any of those guys have been dropped in your leagues, probably not, unless you're in a really shallow league. But like a guy like Urshela maybe got dropped a little bit. It was really, today was, you just knew that regression game was coming for Taijuan Walker. It's just a thing where you're like, you look at the peripherals and you're like, the BABIP's low, the strand rate's high, these things even out. And it certainly did today. So yeah, I think solid pitching matchups. If you can get a guy from the Yankees in your lineup, I certainly would try to do that.
Yep, it's going to be a big one. Check your wires. I doubt people drop Judge, but some people might drop Stanton because reports didn't look very promising at one point in time. But one guy would pick up Gio Urshela, who was raking beforehand. He went 3 for 4 with a walk in his first game back on Tuesday. They sent Andujar down because Urshela is the everyday third baseman. So he's a guy I would look at if you need some offense. He'll play versus righties and lefties, and he hits in the middle of that order. So go grab some Urshela on that one. The last team we're going to talk about here is the Miami Marlins. They have 4 at Atlanta: Tomlin, Hamels, Fried, Ian Anderson. could be a tricky 4-gamer there. But then they get 3 at the Yankees. Deivi Garcia has been pretty good. Garrett Cole and Masahiro Tanaka. So there's about 4 starts there that scare me for hits. I know you want them for a different reason, though. So what's your thoughts on Miami?
I'm so one-dimensional. Those 4 against Atlanta, to start off with, the full week. I think a lot depends. They're with the Yankees towards the end there. I don't know what the game gap is between when the regular season ends and when the playoffs start. Do you know?
The regular season is supposed to end on the 27th, and I believe I saw the 31st or 30th. How many days are in January, February, March?
30.
Yeah, so 30th. 30th will be the first day. So you got about 2 or 3 days. Okay.
So that'll be interesting to see what they want to do, because like a guy like Cole, is Cole going to pitch the second to last game of the season? If that means that he's not ready for game 1 of the playoffs, probably not. Or else he maybe goes like a bullpen session, 2 or 3 innings, something like that, just to keep him warm. So that's one thing to consider, factor in there. But I think generally speaking, it's just I love that Braves pitching, but it is coming back and maybe getting a little bit better. But like a guy like Hamels doesn't really worry me yet. He came back from the injury last year with the Cubs and was terrible. So I think it's just a lot of it is, you got to kind of balance like the ease of schedule, what you need from a category perspective, but then also like what is the mentality of the team going to be heading in there, right? Like it's almost like in some respects, I don't mind having a team that's totally out of it because they don't have a reason to rest guys. It's those guys who have already clinched, who generally give like one off day, maybe the last day of the season or the second to last day of the season, or a half game the last day of the season, where they give them a little bit of a break. And those are the guys that I kind of want to be a little bit cautious with, because you want games, you want volume, because what you're hoping to do, if you're behind at least, is when these guys sit out and when the players don't play, that you have an opportunity to make up a little bit of ground there. So, yeah. And also I'm pissed off because Matt Andrees just came in for some reason in the top of the 8th inning, and I picked him up and I have him in all my lineups because he got the last 2 saves for the Angels, and it's meaningless. It's all meaningless. And I sat him for Jeremy Jeffress, who lost his game, so I was happy because I sat him, and then he got the win. He blew the save, and then he got the win. Oh man. Process right, maybe. Outcome wrong.
Gotta love it. Yeah. Gotta love 2020. Let's talk about some 2-start pitching options this week, and some are interesting. So I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts on this. And we'll start with Josh Tomlin, home versus Miami, home versus Boston. Looking at Tomlin's game logs, it's been a rocky road with not a lot of strikeouts. So what is it you see here? 2 offenses you can exploit, or is there something else with Tomlin that strikes a fancy for you?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of this, right? I'm in mostly 15-team leagues. And the last time of the season, depending on what you need, there's going to be different things going on. So in his last game against the Nationals, he did end up getting rocked, but he started off well. 28 Ks in 32 innings. The pitch mix change that we've heard about. It's not a great start, but I'm to the point where like if a guy just doesn't Colby Allard it, I feel pretty good. And, the matchups aren't terrible. Like Miami, yes, they can smash every once in a while, but, you can't really steer clear of that. And then Boston, again, has been a little lackluster. So, again, like it's a huge risk. But if you're looking for 2-start pitchers, chances are, like depending on the leagues you're playing in, like I was attacking guys this week for next week's 2 steps. And so there's going to be some guys available. But if you think a guy can go 5 innings and be at least borderline serviceable, they almost, depending on what you're looking after, if you're chasing wins, if you're chasing Ks, they become borderline must start towards the end of the week, especially because sometimes the lineups aren't as strong at the end of the season. So, again, not necessarily ideal, but somebody that I would certainly look at based on just the matchups and the fact that he plays for a good hitting team. So wins are a possibility.
Yeah, the next guy you have here is Kyle Freeland at the Giants, at the D-backs. I like this quite a bit. We talked about Rockies pitchers outside of Coors. Freeland's been outstanding outside of Coors this year. A 2.63 ERA with a 3.67 xFIP on the road compared to an ERA closer to 5 at home. 23% K rate on the road. So obviously doing things on the road much better at home as you kind of expect with Rockies pitchers. But he's been great this year. So I like that matchup. The Giants, they're hitting, but, you can exploit them. Freeland's done that before. And the D-backs you can definitely have your fun with. So how high are you on Freeland going into the final week?
Well, I love Freeland going into the other week. Let me tell you, he's been the bane of my existence this year because I spent a bunch of fab on him to pick him up. And then, and I think I just miscalculated like when he was starting. So he never was in the lineup for the good starts, and he was in there for a couple bad ones. And I dropped him down the end of the stretch here in one of my mains because of the way that the schedule lined up. It lined up where he was supposed to pitch, I think, on a Wednesday, and then he was supposed to have a 2-start week against the A's and the Dodgers at home. And I was like, I'm not going to start him the next 2 weeks. I can't keep him. And then his start was, instead of Wednesday, it was Tuesday. So he got a nicer two-step that week. And then anyways, this is all to say, I think Freeland, he's got 2 plush matchups too that week. I mean, he might be my like guy who could be on the free agent waiver wire, who is the best 2-step next week that might be available. If you can go for it. And the Rockies are going to be in it. And so they're going to be trying really hard. And yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, no, I like him a lot in the 2-step. Really good spot for them. Him going into those matchups. Brady Singer, mentioned him earlier with the Royals. He gets St. Louis and he gets Detroit, 2 offenses you can definitely have fun with. Coming off a great start against the Indians on the 10th. We'll see how he does on Wednesday night as we're recording on Tuesday. But, big expectations for him. Threw pretty well to start. The last, 3 or 4 starts were rocky before the one on the 10th there, Stevens. So it was very, very good. Looks like he's been a little unlucky at times. But what's your thoughts on Brady Singer going into the final week?
Yeah, I mean, the Detroit start is the one that I really want. I mean, he's going up against Detroit tomorrow, Wednesday. I've got him in a bunch of deeper leagues, so I'm really hoping he can do well. The Tigers do struggle against right-handed pitchers. I know that they have exceeded expectations in terms of hitting, but they're much better against lefties than they are against righties, at least over the course of the season. Things can always change with lineups changing so much, and they certainly rock Jake Junis, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just a really nice 2-step towards the end of the season. Again, you just hope that the guys get the 2 steps. He's a young guy. They don't want to put too much stress on the arm, but hopefully he gets both ends of it because I think it's the type of guy who he's good enough where he can be a league winner for you down the stretch there.
Yeah, the next guy, Trevor Rogers, gets at Atlanta at the Yankees. This is a tricky one, to say the least. Strikeouts have been there for Rogers. Got smoked his last outing against Philadelphia. Pitched pretty well prior to that. The long ball's been in his repertoire, which can be scary in those matchups. How excited are you to try 2-stepping with Rogers?
I'm crazy. I'm super excited. I've got him in a bunch of leagues. He's definitely going to be in there for me. I mean, the thing about this is, and again, this is deeper leagues that I'm talking about, your 15-team leagues. Trevor Rogers got crushed by the Phillies, but I don't mind it. And the reason why I don't mind it is because it was 3 innings. It was 9 hits. It was 0 walks. And I think it was 6 Ks, 7 Ks even maybe, 5 Ks. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I mean, Philly mashes lefties. So there was danger in that start. And I think it was the second end of a 2-step as well for him. But, the thing about Rogers is when you look under the hood, the K- walk rate, the swinging strike rate, everything looks really good. He's getting guys to chase. The fastball's playing up, the velo's up, the changeup has been really nice pitch for him. And so, yes, I mean, any of these guys can do that. And that you go into these starts, and this is kind of my mentality, and maybe it's wrong, right? You're talking to a guy who started Vince Velasquez in actually 6 really important leagues this week, right? Is you think about it, okay, like let's say over the course of a season, Trevor Rogers probably has like a 4 to 5 ERA. So over the long haul, you start him every single time. He's likely to give you that type of an outcome. When he goes into a single start, he can give you 0 earned runs. He could give you 7 earned runs like he did. But over the longer term play, he's going to give you 4 to 5 earned runs, per 9, right? So you're looking at maybe like, 2 to 3 on average for every 5 innings pitched, right? And I don't mind that. Because he's going to get you Ks. Like, he's showing that he's got the skills for Ks. And it's just a matter of what the luck happens, and maybe it's luck maybe it's not. Like, maybe he just gets destroyed. But generally speaking, the vast majority of pitchers fall within a range for their BABIP. And when a guy gets, I don't know what his BABIP was in his last game, but when a guy gets like a 500 BABIP against him in a game, it just happens, right? Because plenty of guys hit the ball hard and it gets caught. And sometimes that happens in the games and sometimes it doesn't. And so my philosophy is, if the guy's got the skills and he looks good enough, I hope that he ends up in that 4 to 5 ERA range that he's going to give me. Maybe I get lucky, maybe I get unlucky, but that's my hope. And with a guy like Rogers, especially last week of the season, 2 starts at home against lineups that are fine, but they're not that scary. Like the Yankees is scary for sure.
Say what?
The Yankees are scary for sure, but they're also, with Judge and Stanton in there, they're also going to be K guys. So again, maybe I probably do this very wrong, people. I probably do this very wrong, but I would definitely have him in there. I'm going to have him in there probably for all of my leagues, unless I look at my leagues and I say Ks aren't moving much. I'm more worried about ratios, something like that. But I don't necessarily love to play like that, because I think that's crazy things can happen the last couple of weeks when there's differentials in innings pitched and things like that. So we'll see. But I'm a fan of his to start next week.
Yeah, I'll pass. But you go get him. The next guy, though, I like quite a bit, Seth Lugo. Big fan of what's going on here. We loved him in the bullpen to start the year as a guy that can get some potential saves, wins, and whatnot. They moved him in the rotation. They stretched him out. He's thrown at least 5 innings in 2 straight starts. In his 4 starts since he started ramping up, he's got at least 5 Ks in every start. ERA is at 2.65, an xTIP of 1.94 over those 4 starts. He's been outstanding. He's just dominating people right now. And he has a couple of really, really strong matchups against Tampa Bay and the Washington Nationals, an offense that does not scare me outside of, like I said earlier, Soto and Trey Turner. So what's your thoughts on Seth Lugo in the final week? This is a guy I can definitely get behind.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's been really good. I mean, I haven't checked to see like what's really changed with him. I mean, that's a little bit of what's sad about this season, I think. And actually, our friend Brian Slack said this on the podcast with Scott Jenstead, and I thought it was good. Is normally you're really focused on skills, like you're monitoring the skills, you're looking for those changes, and you certainly still are. But so much more of it this year is information management. It's having your pulse on it. It's like, yeah, in a regular season, maybe I don't have Trevor Rogers, but there's no other good options. So it's like with Seth Lugo, it's like maybe I would do a deeper dive if it was a longer season, but I'm going to have Seth Lugo in my lineup, right? Because what are my alternatives right now, right? It's really scary there. So again, I think he's definitely a must start. He's going over 5 the last 2 innings, like last 2 games, like you mentioned. His BABIP is even high over the last 2 games, so it's not necessarily like he's getting lucky. He's generating a really high ground ball rate, so he checks all the boxes. And I'm surprised, to be honest with you. I didn't think that he was going to adjust to being a starter as well as he has. And I don't know if it's a long-term thing, but certainly he's been almost a revelation moving into the starting rotation and doing what he's done, given the context that we're in right now.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I was kind of skeptical of him joining the rotation, but he's been awesome, absolutely awesome. So big fan of that. The next one's an interesting one. I can definitely get behind JT Brubaker of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's got the Cubs. He's got the Indians, 2 teams that strike out a lot. That offenses have been super inconsistent. Brubaker had a rough one against the White Sox. That happens, but prior to that, he's still, even with the White Sox game, he's thrown at least 5 innings in 3 straight starts. He struck out at least 5 in 4 straight starts. His ratios have looked pretty good. Even in that White Sox start where he had 7 runs, an 11.81 ERA with a 3.91 xFIP. So there's a lot being said for what happened in that start right there. I like this call quite a bit. I think he's going to be available on a lot of waiver wires. Pretty good matchups here. What say you, Toby?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty solid. The skills bear that out. Certainly above average, I think, in a lot of different respects. He gets a little strength swing and miss, gets some Ks, and as you mentioned, the offenses are, I mean, Cleveland struggled against lefties. Both teams have struggled against lefties, and he's a righty, so not necessarily ideal in that respect. But again, a guy who can go 5. Team's not great, but opposition isn't scary. It's not the White Sox. So he's another guy, I think, looking at the waiver wire, it will be really interesting down the stretch here to see if you go after him. If your ratios are shot, just do it.
Just do it. Drew Smiley, you've already professed your love for him on this show. The one thing that's frustrating with Drew is he hasn't gone more than 4 innings because he hasn't been able to stay healthy enough to get stretched out, which has been Drew Smiley's thing. But even when he pitches, he's been great. Just a couple runs at the most a game. Strikeouts are there. The velocity is still kind of hanging around that we liked, that we saw last season before that he came to the Giants. All things point to goodness. He places Colorado and San Diego both at home. 2 could be good offense, especially San Diego. But I'm with you. You all in on Smiley for the final week?
You say goodness, I say greatness.
I love it.
I am all in on Drew Smiley. Drew Smiley, okay, I'm going to give it to you straight. Drew Smiley looked absolutely stunning in his appearance so far. 4 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts. Now, this tweet was shared with me by Brian Slack, and it's Jordan Rosenblum at Rosen Jordan Bloom, who is a fantastic analyst. He does a lot of minor league work, but also some really great work, generally speaking. And he's got some gems. Me and him agree on some dynasty guys. So I agree with everything he says. But so I noticed this when I looked at Smiley's last start. His velo's up, way up. It's way up since he's come back. He averaged 95 miles per hour yesterday. So this is an older tweet, but this is when his 4 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts, 3 miles per hour over his previous season. His fastball spin was plus 200 RPMs, which again we want that high spin 4-seamer that he can throw up in the zone. And then, the peripherals were really nice. And I think he's the type of guy who, confirmation bias. I loved heading into the season for this very reason. The velo was up. Things were looking good. And again, it's only one time back, but the velocity being up that much is massive for him. The spin rate being up is massive for him as well. And I just think I think he can be a difference maker down the stretch here. So I'm going on record all in Drew Smiley. I've done this thing now where when I'm all in on guys or I have them in my lineups, I search for them since I found that functionality this year on NFBC, and there shows little green things. If I were to do that for Drew Smiley, I actually created a video for Yancey, and I sent it to Brian Slack as well because he's on Team Smiley. I sent it, and it's me scrolling through my Smiley shares. And I think I had 12 Smiley shares heading into the year, and I've got just as many, if not more. And he's starting on pretty much all of my teams this week. So I'm really excited about him, and I think the 2-step next week will be really nice. I also like Tyler Anderson's. Again, it's not great, and Anderson can get destroyed. But in the grand scheme of things, I think you got to go for it if there's a chance that it can help you out. I'd rather be aggressive and lose than be passive and lose and regret not being aggressive and trying to let other people lose instead of me winning.
Well, you established that with your Rogers call. So you've definitely established that aggressiveness part.
I'm overly aggressive, people. Don't follow what I do. Start Jared Walsh. Don't listen to a word I say. It's bad.
Well, the Anderson thing I was going to mention, the one thing that people should really look to is it's still a small sample, obviously, but the splits have been pretty good this year. Home 1.82 ERA, road 7.59. It's given up on the road a 4.01 WOBA, at home a 2.51 WOBA. So he's definitely controlled things in Oracle Park. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, Colorado, San Diego could be tricky, but he does pitch extremely better at home. So something to keep in mind there. Josh, yeah.
A couple pieces on Tyler Anderson. Number one, I've never gotten in an argument with a player on Twitter, but Tyler Anderson's father has gotten in an argument with me about Tyler Anderson. Number two, I had him in my bold predictions article 3 or 4 years ago, Tyler Anderson. So it's almost fate that I have him in virtually every single league as well. So next week, I am a Giants fan, hardcore, Bubba. Hardcore Giants fan. I'm all in.
Playoffs, so watch and enjoy. Josh Fleming of the Tampa Bay Rays, he gets a couple nice matchups at home against the Mets and the Phillies. The Phillies do like themselves some lefty, so that'll be interesting, but definitely good ballpark to pitch in. Could make some hay in that one. The strikeouts have been there in a couple starts this year. It's just a guy that trying to get the ratios, maybe some counting stats for you.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy. I mean, the matchups aren't bad. And remember, Philly's banged up, but they're still like, I think 85% to make the playoffs, something like that. Probably more after today's win. So chances are they might be resting some guys that last game of the season. So that's helpful. The Rays may also be, so I don't know if I'd expect 5 from him, but in terms of 2 starts, again, like in deeper leagues, this is 15-team leagues mostly. I don't think I'd be trying these guys out in 12s, except for Drew Smyly. It's just one of these things where sometimes you just got to go with it. And Fleming's been fine, and you just hope he can go 5 and get you 3 to 5 strikeouts, something like that.
Yep, no doubt about it. And the last guy you have down here, and this is another risky one, but Kyle Gibson at the Angels at home against Houston, a Houston team that's getting healthy. How excited are you about Kyle Gibson?
For those of you who are listening to the podcast, you guys should see Bubba's face. He does not have a poker face when it comes to some of my 2-start pitcher suggestions. Let's just say he's not a fan of Kyle Gibson. I'm not a fan of Kyle Gibson either. I would steer pretty clear of this because I think the Astros are going to be needing to play really hard in that last game of the season. Gibson's just been awful recently. He's just not been good. He's never really looked good this season. There's some glimmers, as there always is with Kyle Gibson, but he's not even getting the Ks now. And so I'd steer clear of this. This is desperation.
I love it.
This is very desperation. I mean, I'd much rather Trevor Rogers than
he said that speaks volumes right there. So go check that out. And if you have any waiver wire questions, just hit one of us up on Twitter or tag us both. We'll help you out there because it's going to be different for every league. So we don't need to go through all of those, but we do have a few listener questions we can jump on today. At Breaking Ben Tidd asks a question. Are there any poor performances and also we'll get way into 2021 and recapping 2020 in the upcoming weeks, but here's a little taste of that stuff. Are there any poor performances that you think will hold more weight going into next year's rankings ADPs as opposed to those you'll easily write off? So are there guys that maybe didn't do so well that you're still gonna like going into the next season?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be it's going to be absolutely fascinating to me. I can already see the conversation happening. Like Javi Baez is a guy where people are like, I'm out on Javi Baez. He looks lost at the plate. I mean, how old is Javi Baez? 26? Yeah, 27?
Not old.
He's Javi Baez. He's Javi Baez. He was a huge risk this year because of his approach at the plate. We know that, right? And I know that. I drafted him. I have him on one of my main event teams. He's been terrible, but we knew this was a possibility. Just like 350, 15 homers and 7 stolen bases was a possibility because those are the fluctuations a guy with his approach is going to have. If Javi Baez falls in drafts next year, I'm going to be all over him. That is if he falls out of my first 4 picks, because next year I'm going with 4 starting pitchers to start off with. That's how conservative I've gotten with starting pitching, so I don't have to pitch Trevor Rogers and be really excited about it. But Javi Baez is one, where I can just already see the talk. Christian Yelich is another one, who guys are going to have towards the back end of the first round. I think we're putting too much on it. I mean, it was a shortened spring training, so guys start out slow. Psychologically, they start to press. They start to press. They get out of the routines that they're used to. I think that's what's happening, and I think we have to toss out a lot of what we've seen in hitters. I think, similarly with pitchers towards the beginning of the season, what we've seen. I just think that we're placing a lot of emphasis on this year. And if a guy's young and he's good and he sucks this year, I don't see a reason to believe that he's going to be bad next year unless I get some sort of information that points me in that direction. But even if it was an injury, I mean, unless it's an injury that's going to linger, I think those are going to be the big opportunities in next year's draft. Because yes, I think as we get closer to draft time, people will adjust and people will do the analysis and they'll get closer and they'll get closer. But there's going to be 1 to 2 round differences, for guys that I don't think should be there. So take advantage of it next year. Take advantage of the recency bias and the way it plays out.
Yeah, pulling up my rankings from before the season, Baez would be one for sure, and he was going later than I thought already in drafts this past year. So that value would be very, very nice. You mentioned Yelich is an obvious one that's going to – I've seen guys talk about second round with Yelich, which would just blow my mind. JD Martinez, this is one I really want to dig into some more. He's older, so –
He is.
That's a question, but I still think the hit – I don't see that hit tool disappearing that quickly with him. So – I want to dig in more on him, and that's what I'm looking forward to this offseason is looking at a small sample, trying to figure a few things out with that and kind of deciding how much relevance I want to take with it type situation. And those are a couple that really, really stand out for me. Like Keston Hiura, who a lot of guys are high on, really hasn't been that great this year, especially from a batting average standpoint. So was it kind of fluky and just a big hard hit rate with a lot of swing and miss, or is there something else going on this year? So guys like that, young players like you mentioned, then I'll sprinkle in the old guy in JD, try to get an idea of what's going on. Even, this guy didn't go super early, but I know we were both kind of into him, especially for stolen bases. What happened to Med Rosario this year? He's super young. I want to see.
It's a great example.
We thought he was taking the next step, and he just kind of vanished. I know he got hurt, but he's not stealing. His average is gone. He was at least hitting 70 or 80 and stealing bags. It looks so good. And I know he wasn't going early, partly because a shortstop's so deep. But maybe it's not the guys at the top of the draft I want to look at so much as guys that we were looking at as, we could fill in our rosters with and feel comfortable with that maybe didn't pan out so much. What gives type stuff. And I want to know about that. So
Rosario is a great example of a guy who went 125 this year, 125, 135, who will drop probably past pick 200, who's a 23-year-old guy with the exact same skills he had in a previous year. Who struggled. And I think especially guys who struggle with confidence and you don't have time to pick it up and you feel that pressure. I mean, a guy who I got to decide on, but Victor Robles, I loved Victor Robles. I have him on important teams. He's been an utter failure. He also came into camp overweight. He lost over a foot per second on his sprint speed. So his most valuable tool from a fantasy perspective was diminished heading into the season and we didn't know about it, right? And so that's the type of thing that I don't think will happen next year with ideally a full spring training, right? Where a guy is able to implement his regimen. He's not at home waiting to get off the COVID list. Things like that where I think those can make a big difference where he's a guy who's probably going to drop to pick 100, I would guess. Probably in that where Oscar Mercado and guys like that were going last year because people are going to, again, be questioning it. And yeah, I think it's perfectly okay to question the hit tool. But from a roster construction perspective, if he can get back to where he has been from his stolen base perspective, and again, being now a 23-year-old with prospect pedigree in what should be a better lineup next year, I think there's going to be a lot of value to be had by those guys that the market just overcorrects for based on a small sample, even if there's a lot of merit to the analysis that gets you there.
Yeah, totally agree. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I know it's been a long, short season, but it's going to be a lot of fun kind of trying to evaluate things to get ready for next year. It'll be really interesting to see how it plays out because ADPs are going to be insane. So that'll be a lot of fun. Our buddy David Mendelson has a two-parter. I'll start with the first part, and then you guys can talk about your little tour, your band. But Shane Bieber or Jacob deGrom as the first pitcher off the board in 2021. I'll keep it simple. I am still going Jacob deGrom. He could be the NL Cy Young Award winner this year. Bieber's been awesome. Not going to dispute that at all. Nothing against him, but prove it year after year after year like deGrom does, and then we can talk about passing him up. But for now, Jacob deGrom for me.
Yeah, DeGrom is special. I mean, he's just so good. There are, I mean, what pitchers do you go into a start? Knock on wood, because he's going tomorrow. He better not mess up when I need him. And he could get 3 starts the rest of the way, which would be, oh my God, it would be unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, he is just, the consistency is amazing. 100-mile-per-hour fastball with like a 94-mile-per-hour slider. Like he's otherworldly. That being said, like, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm going to really love being in the back half of the first round next year because Garrett Cole's going to fall. And, and that's great because I think he's going to be awesome. And I still might have him as my number 1 starting pitcher heading into next year. Remember, like he's had a little bit of I feel like his schedule hasn't been that easy from a hitting perspective. The NL East is a tough hitting division. The AL East is not that much better. Obviously, the Red Sox weren't as good as we anticipated, but there's not any like gimmies necessarily. And so I think that plays into it a little bit. Maybe they'll have the same arrangement next year. I don't know, but I do think that we're going to underrate Garrett Cole severely because you have the change of scenery, but he's getting back to where he was last year. He's not quite there. He still gives up too many fly balls, but he is an elite pitcher, and playing for the Yankees, he's going to get a crap ton of wins. And as much as you say Jacob deGrom and those ratios are amazing, they are amazing. But the guys before this year who have won people leagues are Verlander and Cole. DeGrom has won people leagues. Don't get me wrong. But you cannot underestimate the importance of those wins in fantasy. And you cannot go into a season thinking there's going to be a massive difference between them, but they are important. And it's fairly consistent negative against DeGrom. And I know I'm foolish for even mentioning it, but I think Cole's still in that conversation for me.
Yeah, DeGrom finishes out the year at Philly tomorrow, then home versus Tampa Bay next week, and on the road against Washington. So 3 pretty good matchups. As you were saying, let's throw a curveball to what you just said there, because I'm a huge Cole fan as well, and I'm a believer that he's going to be just fine next year. The value on that you're going to get on him is going to be awesome, because where did he have to go this year? Like pick 3, 4, 5, something along those lines, depending on where you drafted. And so you could definitely get him towards the back end, because there's a question we're going to get to here pretty soon. A couple guys don't even think he's going to be in the first round this next year, which I think is pretty comical to me. But I would honestly, and I know some will disagree with me on this one, I'd have Cole ahead of Bieber going into next year's draft. But people think I'm probably crazy on that. But I'm a huge Cole believer, just like you said. We've seen him do it. I'm not downplaying Shane Bieber, but these guys have done it time and time again, like you said, that just are game changers for you on a regular basis.
Yeah, the key for Bieber is the velo bump. He's gotten a 1 mile per hour increase in that velo and the development of that cutter. So I can certainly see, but I agree with you. I mean, I think there's something about, I think that's there. Like if I were to ask you, okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. I apologize. But what do you think Garrett Cole's ERA is right now without looking?
It's probably still below 3. It's probably like a 2.7 or something.
Okay. It's higher than that. It's a 3.2.
Okay.
What would you say? Okay, I'm not gonna, this is bad to ask you. What do you think his K- walk rate is?
He's still striking out a good amount. He's walking a few. Let's go 26%.
27%.
Okay.
Right. What's his swinging strike rate is less than 1% below where it was last year. Yeah. And if we were to look at this over the last 2 starts or 3 starts when the velo's been higher, he's there. I mean, that's going to be, that's going to be the steal of the century next year when you're drafting like 7-8 and Cole's sitting there for you at 7-8 and then coming around on the other side. Oh
man.
No, not a hitter, Bubba. No,
I forgot.
You're looking, and then on the other end of that is like a Darvish, or
you gonna go Verlander, or are you worried about the injury?
Or everybody who's on the Sixto train drafting Sixto.
I want Sixto, but I don't think I'm gonna have the balls to pick him where he's gonna be going. I love Sixto. love him. I think he's so good.
I love what I'm seeing. I don't want to be a downer, but he's been absolutely excellent, and the stuff is filthy. He's also been lucky so far this year, just from BABIP perspective, strand rate perspective. The Ks are not. I don't think that'll be the question. For me, is are the Ks elite for him? I'm not convinced that they're going to be, but again, I've been wrong about many a thing before, so I won't be on that train. But it's going to be interesting to see where that helium goes. Especially, what's going to be funny is when he blows up in one of his last starts. Yep. Is their reaction after that?
Or spring training. Hopefully, we get a real spring training, and his first 2 appearances just get shelled.
Totally.
Like all of a sudden, you're going to get the maybe 3rd round, 4th round pitcher. All of a sudden, he drops the 5th, maybe 6th, and now your eyes light up. Oh, okay, we got something here. But we'll see, because some people just overreact a lot. But yeah, the helium is coming like crazy. Paul Sporer has already given his endorsement, which is going to just make everybody skyrocket. We've seen Rob Silver and some others. So, yeah, it's going to be tough for guys like you and me, Toby, who kind of go for the more consistent, I guess, maybe not the right word, but they've done it a few times approach. It's going to be a little tricky to go for Sixto that early.
They grab Sixto, we go Tristan McKenzie. Yeah, have you seen him? I mean,
trust me. Hey, DFS, I've seen them all, my friend.
Oh, I know you have, but I'm just I haven't heard. I shouldn't say this. I've really scaled back my fantasy baseball podcast this year. I'm just I feel so burned out about everything, even though the season's still going on. I'm just I've been listening to fantasy football podcasts just because, which reminds me I have to do waiver wire before I go to bed tonight. Oh,
you better hurry up.
I lost on that AJ Brown drop in the end zone towards the end there. And, but I mean, Tristan McKenzie is just, he's got a close to a 30% K- walk rate. He's been super lucky too, BABIP wise, although he keeps on giving up home runs. So he ends up last game, I think he gave up 4 runs, and he gave up 3 hits and two walks or something like that. And he somehow gave up 4 runs. So, but I mean, he's really good. And we know what the Indians can do with pitchers who are like that. And he's going to be going, he'll be going higher. He'll be going maybe 150 or something like that. But, he's been incredible too. So it's a really exciting time in the league. I mean, there's so much talent. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, McKenzie's a good one. Some starts, he just kind of gives it up a little too much. Like you said, the home runs can get to him, but when he's on, he's filthy. So there's a lot to like there with Mr. Tristan McKenzie. But we'll get into all that goodness later on. There's going to be fun discussions where we'll just go off the rails real quickly on those. But the other thing David mentioned, and I believe this is on the last podcast you were on with him, he also heard that Chuck Nasty and the Ginger Mountain Boys are releasing their tour schedule next week. How excited are you about that? Very excited. One of my favorite bands. We both really like Chuck Nasty and the Ginger Mountain Boys. Really good bluegrass band out of Georgia. They're a real band? No, it's not a real band. So on our with that. Chuck Nasty's Charlie Blackmon, I'm assuming. Charlie Blackmon. So on the last Triple Play podcast that I was on, they did. The question was who has the best facial hair in the Major League Baseball? And so somebody did Charlie Blackmon, somebody did Justin Turner, somebody did Matt Carpenter, and somebody did. I think I'm forgetting my own. Sergio Romo? No. Can't remember who it was, but we were just saying, and then somehow it went from that to they look like a bunch of guys who would be in a bluegrass band, and then we named it Chuck Nasty and the Ginger Mountain Boys. Ginger because of Big Red, Justin Turner, and then Chuck Nasty, and so we made up this whole elaborate thing about how which instruments are they playing, and it was a fun podcast if you want to go back and listen to it. It's always a blast to go on with those guys. That's funny. A couple more questions we got here. The Draft Champions podcast asks, how many starting pitchers go in round 1 next year at the NFBC? Obviously, 15-teamer. We are kind of toying with that just a second ago. I believe the easy answer is 3 or 4. But we know, as you know, especially doing the big money drafts, as we get closer and closer to the season, starting pitcher comes up. I wouldn't be shocked if 4 are there by the beginning of the season. What about you?
Yeah, I think so. We got DeGrom,
Cole and Bieber.
Bieber for sure.
Do people buy into Bueller?
I mean, I think the challenge there is, I mean, it's going to sound crazy to say, but should Clayton Kershaw
I
be
disagree.
in that conversation, right? With the increased velo, I mean, he's been gold,
Awesome.
right? You have Scherzer, who has not been good this year from a results perspective, but the skills still look elite, and he's really struggled third time through the order. I mean, the Nats have left him high and dry on a couple occasions. Like, I think he went into his last game, I think he'd already thrown like 104 pitches or something like that, and they threw him out for the sixth against the Braves. He was up 4-2, and he promptly gave up 5 consecutive hits and left down 6-4 with 119 pitches thrown, right?
And David Martinez had no one getting loose. That's what took so long to get him out of the game.
Man,
He sent him out there. He sent him out there at 102 pitches with no one loose in the bullpen. So once trouble started early, it took a while to get someone loose, and that's what happened.
It's just
That's bad management.
It's just brutal, and this has happened like 3 or 4 times this year where he loses it in the 6th or the 7th, and it's like they're too stubborn to take him out. It's almost like they're like, Max, if you want to stay in there, stay in there. But like, it's pretty clear that he's just getting destroyed. But I also think that from a skills perspective, there's no reason for me that I see why he should not be in that first round as well. Maybe he's a early second rounder in a 15-team draft as well. Who else am I missing?
Yeah, Darvish possibly coming up in there.
Possibly. I mean, it's hard to argue against Darvish if he's healthy in spring with what will have been a year and a half of pitching. There's just guys who are coming out of nowhere. I mean, I haven't looked at his full stats, but like Aaron Nola's been awesome this year, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of guys who, depending on how they finish off this year, who could be vying for that first, second round spot. It'll be really interesting to see what happens there. I wouldn't be surprised if people put a little bit more of an onus. It feels like it happens every year where people put a little bit more emphasis on pitching, just because streaming pitchers is so uncomfortable. I've joked around about this, but that I'm going to create the full house strategy after my pocket aces. And that's 3 aces and 2 number 2 starting pitchers in my drafts next year. And I'm only halfway joking. I mean, because my best team this year in the main event is a team where I had drafted 3 of my first 4 picks were starting pitchers. And I think you look at Phil DeSalle and, kind of his approach, which was very pitching heavy. And even me, I was like, wow, that's a lot of pitching. But he's doing really well in a lot of his drafts as well, because you just lose so much when you use streamers. It can go so far south so quickly, especially in a shortened season, where guys don't have a chance to write it, and that's happened to me in a couple leagues where I'm still doing well, but I pretty much lost a shot at maybe winning one of my leagues where the team was really good to begin with, but I had blowups on guys that I was starting, guys like Trevor Rogers, So anyways.
Yeah, no, we'll see. Like Cole, DeGrom, Bieber for sure. Will be in that first round. Then it'll get very, very interesting to see where that all plays out from there. Our buddy Chris at Baseball Pods asks, in the same vein, how many leagues have Bieber, DeGrom in whichever order as the top 2 overall picks in the draft? Now, I don't think they'll go top 2 in many at all. I know you are cool taking pitching number 1. I'm not saying one of them might not go number 1. I doubt both of them go 1-2 very often.
Yeah. I mean, I think the challenge, right, is we're forgetting about how many good hitters there are. I mean, you're going to have Acuna, you're going to have Yelich, have Betts just in this phenomenal situation in LA. What's that? You have Tatis. Where does Tatis go? You got Trout. Like, that's 5 hitters that are unfreaking believable. And people love their hitters, right? So it's gonna be really fascinating to see how that all sifts out, right? Like, because I think you could argue for any of those guys to be number 1, and those guys will be drafted number 1 in a lot of different drafts. So, I mean, just an unbelievable, not Yelich, but just an unbelievable level of talent And I think it's going to be really interesting. And I think next year, the back half of the draft is where I'm going to want to be in a lot of instances. Although, I mean, DeGrom and Bieber are certainly very enticing. And remember, though, too, is that the AL Central is really bad now. Well, it's actually not that bad from a hitting perspective. But if you're on the Indians, it's all right. But like, there are some up and coming, teams will get better theoretically. Maybe they won't. Maybe the Tigers and Rose won't. I don't know. Never mind. Let's not go down that road.
Last question we have tonight from Brian Slack. And it's kind of, we basically already answered it, but he asked, who's a player you got this year that you're excited to be back in on next year? Could be either good or bad so far. Bad may be more interesting. We mentioned guys like Javi Baez, JD Martinez, maybe Ahmed Rosario. I think those are some things we're into. Is there anything else you wanted to elaborate on this for?
One guy I think is really fascinating is going to be Yohan Moncada. Because he's been very clear, like he just hasn't been the same guy since COVID. His legs aren't working. He's just struggled a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see how the industry responds to him. He's going to be a guy that, assuming he comes back in the spring and he looks healthy and he's talking healthy, he's going to be a guy that I really still love a lot, just because the situation is wonderful. He's got wonderful talent. It hasn't gone away. He's still very young. So that's one guy who I was very big on. I think he was my AO MVP pick this year, who I think I'll be back in on if the industry drops him down a couple rounds.
Yep, that could be a lot of fun. It'll be interesting to really, like I said, dig in on some guys. I got a list of guys I want to look at. Good, bad, ugly, guys I wasn't even interested on. Was it real? A lot of fun ways to go about it going into next season. But what are your final thoughts, Toby, as we have basically 10 or 11 days left?
I mean, keep grinding. Grind it till the end. I think, play strategically down the stretch here as much as you can. Invest that time, that you need. Monitor information a lot. Monitor, those 2 start weeks, like who's getting them, who isn't, what are managers saying about how they're going to approach the last week of the season, depending on where they are in the standings, things of that nature. Just be, kind of on guard for all of that stuff. And good luck to everybody down the stretch here. We're in that time where one really good day or one really bad day can really have a huge impact on, or week can have a really huge impact on how our season's finished. So hopefully it goes well for everybody, though I think that's impossible to actually happen. But
yeah,
I do
definitely
hope.
is. Look at the way Flaherty's night on Tuesday went. He had an ERA in the low 3s and well over 5. So that's just the way it's going to go on the shortened season. That's why guys like Phil, he's lucked out. He went pitching heavy and none of them got hurt. So if you do that, you're going to be gold. It's just the way it works. But yeah, grind on. It's going to be fun. There's going to be still a lot of moving and shaking. Those categories are very, very tight still. So going to be fun to see where things end. Hopefully some crowns are awarded and we see where things go. Going into the next week, but should be a fun week. A lot of games, a lot of doubleheaders, as you mentioned. So enjoy it. And then the playoffs are here, and that's going to be awesome. 16 teams. But we'll be back with you guys hopefully next week. We'll see how things keep scheduling out. It's been a lot of fun, but good luck with you. Find out Toby on Twitter at BatFlipCrazy. I'm at BDentric, and this was Bubba the Bat Flip, episode 49. Catch you guys later.